Today on Confessions at the Cabana, my woman on top, Kathy Eldon. Kathy talked to me about the tragic loss of her son, Dan, age 22, in 1993. Kathy is an incredible woman, and this story will really move you. She talked to me about how she had turned her grief into a long journey of love and creativity. She opened up about her guilt of once leaving her family and about the noisy spirits that inspired her new book, Boundless. Kathy is colorful, joyful, and full of surprises. Yes, our conversation did take a few detours, but her zest for life is absolutely amazing. And I think if you've ever been through tremendous hardship, I think Kathy has lots of information and soulful advice to getting through it. So watch this episode. My name is Zoe Scott, and this is my podcast, Confessions at the Cabana. I was born in England, and I chased my dreams across the ocean, landing in America, and then driving all the way to California to live my rock and roll life. I've journeyed from living in the wild to lighting up the stages all around Los Angeles, and I've got plenty of stories to share. But this podcast isn't about me. It's about creating space for others to share their stories, stories that inspire, stories that bring us together, and stories that heal. So come join us here in Malibu at the Cabana. Thank you so much, Kathy Eldon, the creator of Creative Visions, 17 books, movies. What is it you haven't done? You've done so much.
We're just getting going.
You're just getting going.
Whatever we did before, I don't even think about it. It's right now is the need is so great for that creative, active spirit that we all have, that creative spark that we all have, to brightly be illuminated and lit and join forces so we can light the way and be part of the light for this country, this world.
I love that. You know, I always think when people sort of ask me about my life and what has saved me in the darkest moments or what's moved me forward, you know, how did I get to LA, make rock and roll, to Mount? I always think it's the creativity. And you're probably one of the most creative people I have ever met. So I haven't done a deep dive into Boundless. I'm about to.
Thank you.
But I did do a really deep dive into your incredible autobiography, In the Heart of Life. And I just it's like, what a life you have lived, Kathy
I'm only
Eldon.
just getting going.
I mean, I really, and I think so many women would be so inspired by it's your wildness, your curiosity, your passion, the fact you go for it, you follow your muse.
Thank you, Zoe. You know, I really appreciate it. That book was finished, I think it came out in 2013. So it's been another, many, many years. And I think actually the really interesting and exciting part of my life has been the last 13 years, 12 years.
You know what? I'm actually really getting that.
Yeah.
Sitting with you. Yeah. That now, I was going to talk to you about, Kenya, and I was going to talk to you about Dan and how you overcame, Dan's death. But let's talk about now.
Well, and the backstory briefly is that I was a journalist in Kenya.
Yeah.
I had the most privileged time. I got to interview the most creative, active, exciting people who had nothing in many instances. And they took the nothing, but the desire to do something and turned it into projects and businesses.
It's really like out of Africa for our generations, isn't it? I mean, every woman's got to read that book because it's full of adventure, passion. You didn't settle for just living in Mill Hill, suburban life in London. No. I so related to your quest to find something bigger and wilder for yourself.
You did.
Well, I did rock and roll. I didn't do Kenya, but I did rock and roll. So tell us more about your journey.
Yeah,
journey, the bits that you're, as a woman, most proud of.
Gosh, and there's so much that I'm not proud of, actually, and I've been very candid about that in my memoir. I think that the turning point for me was leaving this good man because it wasn't going to be the right for the next 40 years. And him at some level being able to, hate it, but still not be cruel to me, or we just did as much as we could with love, and it was really hard for him. I know. Mike Eldon, I'm just so proud to and honored to have been married to him.
What destroyed you at that point in your life?
I have a theory that depression is when your soul wants you to go one way and you're going another way. And so, you can look at your path and then you look at where you're headed.
I just got chills. I
and
can feel
that space in the middle is the sadness or the blessed unrest, maybe we call it. And I had a beautiful husband and an incredible life, but it wasn't really my path. And I did all kinds of crazy things before I made the decision to go on my own path and find my own.
That must have been very difficult to choose your own path for a mother over it. That must have been terrible. I really admire you though.
No, but we took. I mean, initially Dan was off to college. Amy spent a year in Nairobi, and I was flying back and forth, and she was flying back and forth. But it was the hardest year of my life, and I think I nearly died of grief and guilt and shame and all the things that can destroy us.
Do you think men do those things much more easily?
I don't know. I think that some men, my husband was utterly and completely destroyed and distraught, and he found Guru Mai, who was a beautiful spiritual leader, and through Guru Mai was able to be forgiving and loving. I'm going to cry. And kind. And where's the tissue? Thank you very much.
Everybody's clean.
No, I'm very grateful. Well, thank you. I'm grateful for his evolution into that being. And perhaps had we got there earlier, I do believe I had a different destiny, and I couldn't fulfill it in Kenya, although Kenya is very much a part of our like the home of my heart.
Home of your heart.
It's the home of my heart.
I once heard an amazing drummer, Kenny Aronoff, who's played with all the biggest artists, say that passion is like a sword.
Yeah.
You can either hold it. It just, you saying about Kenya reminds me, you can either hold it and use it, or it can flip back and cut you all over. It sounds like that's what you're saying about.
Right. Well, remember, passion literally means suffering. The passion of Christ is the suffering of Christ. So one of the definitions of passion is actually suffering. So, and when we're passionate about something, often the other part of it is we're suffering because we're so passionate,
So you said that was one of the toughest years of your life. For anyone else who's going through a really tough, that difficult decision to choose yourself over the people you love, that individuation, as Jung talks about it. What advice can you give?
Do it with love. I think that's the only thing that I can say, is that I knew I had to be on a different path, and a lot of it, honestly, I came through spirit, and I use that word advisedly, but I had learned about another dimension at that time. I'd always been interested in other dimensions. Sylvia Browne, who was a very famous American psychic, came to Kenya, and I was a young, brand new journalist with the Nation newspaper. And because she was American and kind of like a bit out there, they said, you go interview her. And I turned up at the Norfolk Hotel, the lovely hotel in Nairobi, and she immediately started telling me things that she had no way of knowing. This was before social media, and we know everything about everybody. But about me and my children, and just like enough to really astound me. And then she said there's going to be a coup in Kenya. And that was dangerous. It was like looking around and who's listening, because there was at a time of, that the government was watching. They were putting journalists in this place called Moy House in 4 inches of water, where, it was really scary. And like 4 months later, she said it was going to be in August. And 4 months later, there was a coup. And just as she had predicted. Anyway, I was very intrigued by her. And I did a test run with a Cambridge scholar. And she identified coins from the 12th century. She just did things that, again, there's no way that she could have known. So I started thinking, from my journalistic perspective, it feels like there is more than meets the eye. And during that interim period when I was leaving my husband, I started reading everything I possibly could on spirituality, and it was the 80s. This is when everybody kind of awakened, Marianne Williamson and
Brilliant.
so many of these people. But my son Dan sort of followed in my footsteps, but in a much bigger way. So he became a photojournalist for Reuters news agency. He broke the story of a terrible famine when he was 21, saved the lives. The story, it triggered a global response that saved the lives of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people.
He was really the son of you.
It's beautiful, and he did that, and he got so excited by the power of storytelling for social change, and that's what you're doing, Zoe, with your podcast. So he stayed on in the country for another year as the country spiraled into a civil war. And on the day he was going to come back to UCLA, there was a terrible bombing by UN forces under American control of a house where they believed a warlord was hiding. The guy wasn't there. They were having a peace meeting to figure out how they could move on from him. Elders, women and children serving, but the leaders of the community 80 were killed and 200 wounded. The survivors begged the journalists to come. Dan was on his way to the airport, and he was packing. And he, together with 4 other journalists, went to the site of this terrible bombing. And the people were so enraged that they killed, shot 4 out of the 5, and 1 survivor. And Dan was 22 years old.
And he was killed.
And he was, murdered by a mob. But he would have understood why they did it. And I understood why they did it. So it was a complicated kind of grief, because you think, I get it. I hate what they did, but I totally get what they did.
But was that a long road for you to forgiveness?
Yes, it was. My immediate response at the memorial service in Kenya was to grab the director of Reuters, and say, we have to transform this horror into a force for good. And we did it with exhibits and books and all kinds of things focused on those journalists and journalists at risk. And we did a feature documentary called Dying to Tell the Story, which really helped me. But forgiveness didn't come until many years later, when we were taking the documentary called Dying to Tell the Story to the United Nations. And my daughter Amy and I were in a cab, and I looked, and it was a Somali taxi driver.
Wow. I just heard that episode this morning, and it was the thing that made me cry most in the book. Tell everybody.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it made me really cry.
I'd never seen a Somali taxi driver. I'd been living in London. I didn't know there was such a thing. And we were on the way to the United Nations for the premiere of our film about ultimately the ending scene is Dan being killed by Somalis. Anyway, we got to the UN, and I thought, I have no idea what's going to happen. And this guy turned around, and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, I know everything about what happened to your son. My cousin was in that she had shrapnel in her head. And he said, I know. He said, all of Somalia regretted what had happened. It was a terrible mistake. He said, on behalf of Somalis, I ask your forgiveness.
I mean, that brings absolute tears to my eyes, to be honest. Kathy, the fact that he had the courage.
Huge.
You were on the way to the UN to screen, right?
Yeah.
The documentary about Dan and his journalist family, and he, oh my God. I mean, if you don't believe in synchronicity.
Exactly, this is insane.
And
what a gift. Because forgiveness, I did a what do you call it, TED Talk. Well, I said that I learned that forgiveness is not about the other person. The other person doesn't know or care. It's about you. And if you hang on to that, I'm going to get revenge, I'm going to get him, ultimately, it's just keeping you back. It's just, but once you forgive, it's all that energy is released.
Right,
it's fantastic,
Right. I read that you really blamed yourself at times.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That must have been like hell.
Yeah, I mean, I really did. And
and how could you have? I mean, he was on the other side of the
yeah,
world.
but who encouraged him? Who taught him about being a journalist and encouraged him to go for it? And but we had a conversation 2 weeks before he was killed. It was really interesting. I was in New York, and I went to a newsstand, and I got Newsweek and Time and a couple of newspapers, and I opened them up, and he was on every page. I mean, a center spread of Newsweek, Time magazine.
Wow.
In all the newspapers, his photographs with him really close to tanks, burning tanks, and in battle scenes. And I finally managed to get him. He was in Nairobi for a brief break because you couldn't call Somalia. And I said, Dan, don't you think it's time that you left? And there was a long pause, and he said, Mom, don't ask me to leave. You know, the story continues. Please don't ask me to leave. And I learned later that he'd been asked to stay on. He knew it was time to go. He'd been asked to stay on.
It's always when you go over your own instincts, right? He'd been asked to stay.
Yeah, he was and that poor person, the guilt that he felt, because Dan had known he wanted to go back to university. He said, please don't ask me to leave. And it was like, there was this long pause, and I said, and he was 22, you know? I said, okay, Dan, I'm so proud of you. You're living the life of your choice, and I'm proud of you. Because ultimately, as a parent, we want our children to be true to themselves, just like we want to be true to ourselves. And if they're not, and if we're not, it's not really a fulfilled, actualized life, I don't think.
Right.
You know, it's a luxury.
Right.
But, you know, he had that opportunity. And I think he died doing something he was passionate about. That word again.
He died doing what he really, truly loved, which was
telling a story that was important, which is what you're doing.
With his camera.
With his camera. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And so at what point did creative visions sort of start blossoming? At what point could you forgive yourself for this absolutely appalling thing had happened and become creative again? When did it all start? Because you are an artist.
I'm very good at nurturing other people, and I think that's my superpower is genuinely is seeing the potential in other people, because I've had the privilege of working with so many people.
Yes.
So it's like, oh my God, you know, have you ever thought about it? But I had a dream in 1990 when it was in the depth of depression. I woke up in the very barren apartment that I was in, and I had a dream of a fully formed dream of an organization to use the power of media to help people achieve their potential, both for themselves and the planet. And it was called Creative Visions. There was a logo, which was the I Ching, the creative, the first whatever it was of the I Ching, which is ancient Chinese divination. I drew a picture of the building we'd be in, and I drew everything that we'd be doing. And I wrote it all down. It was like, I can't even get out of bed. You know, I don't have any money. I have nothing. And I tried to register the name Creative Visions, and it had been taken. And it was like, okay, I stuff it back in the drawer. Months later, I manifested a producer.
Wow.
I really wanted to work with somebody to learn how to make films that matter.
Yes.
And I manifested this guy named Jeffrey, and I shared the vision with him. And he went back to the registry office, and the name had just become available within the last week.
If that isn't a sign, right?
Kind of crazy. So we got it, and Creative Visions Productions was born, which made a bunch of films. But Creative Visions, the foundation, which is really what people know,
yes,
that started in 1998. My dad had very luckily had sold something, and he had $100,000 that he was able to give my three sisters out of the blue, totally unexpected, and to start a foundation. Wow. And they each there's a beautiful local Cedar Rapids, Iowa, gave it all away. Mine, we turned into this thing, and over time we hired, I got an intern, and now it is a global force with millions of people being touched.
It is so beautiful. So just to explain to anyone who doesn't know Creative Visions, it is for activists.
Using the power of storytelling for social change. And we have everything from Navalny, which won the film about Alexei Navalny, won the Oscar recently. And we have about 7 projects that have come out of the fires more recently.
Yes.
Beautiful projects, but art, music, dance, drama, film. About 60% are film.
And how does it work within Creative Visions? Do you match sponsors or do you match producers with how do
We
you
try.
facilitate?
Yeah. The basic thing is we convert the money, we make it possible for people to have a 501c3 status. If people need producers, or obviously funding is the critical thing, where possible, we will try to do that. It's not
You're
something
like a
we can
matchmaker.
guarantee. Yeah. You know, when we're really fortunate, we can really help
can
with
match
that.
me.
But we also have other resources that can help people. So that's Impact Media, but our Impact Education, oh my goodness, the Bezos Family Foundation did a global search to find the best organization in the world for creative expression in youth. And they found us after a very extensive, rigorous, rigorous. But we
proud of that.
I'm so proud. But we got a $6.5 million grant from Bezos.
Wow.
To take over their Students Rebuild project. And this is a stunning project where we had 100,000 entries last year of youth using creative expression. It could be poetry, it could be videos, it can be whatever form of creative expression around the issue. And every year it's different. Last year was peace, inside and out, peace in the world. And this year it's going to be unique and united, which you and I are unique, but man, when we unite.
Woohoo! Let's go. That's what Dan said.
This is it, man. We are it.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously. And we also have a mental health initiative called #CreateConnectCare. We've had thousands of entries through that. We're in Kenneth Cole's Mental Health Coalition. We're so proud of that.
How beautiful. Because really youth is where it's at, right?
God, yes.
I mean, and creativity is just so healing, isn't it?
It's the spark. It's what we require. And right now, because of the fires, we're the only building, Creative Visions is the only commercial building standing.
Wow, you're like a beacon of light.
Please, God, we want to be a convening place for Palisades, for Altadena, for Malibu, to enable people to come together and envision this new future. There are a lot of city leaders who are doing it, but they're all kind of like scattered. And like Rick Caruso is doing a Steadfast Foundation, amazing. Casey over with the Boys and Girls Club. There are all sorts of amazing people, but we need to get everybody talking,
Right.
And we're kind of in the middle.
Yes, there you are again,
right
in the middle of it.
In the middle, at the center.
I think that Creative Visions is such an extraordinary gift. I read in your book that it was inspired also in part by Dan.
Oh, absolutely. Dedicated to the energy of Dan. It's creative activism.
Yes.
And Dan was a creative activist. He used the power, his creative spark, to create awareness of critical issues and catalyze positive change. So that sounds very grown up and impressive, very important. But whoever you are, wherever you are, you have the ability to just tell a story. And everybody has we have our smartphones here.
Yeah.
Let's use it.
I love Joseph Campbell, and he said, stories will change the world. And if you have a story, tell a big story. You certainly have a really big story. But I think we've lost that time out of mind where we sit by the fires and tell our stories, right? And maybe that's where podcasting is taking us, right back to there, where we sit by the fires and we tell our stories and we share our stories.
There will be a wonderful market for exactly what you need.
Let's talk about now, from the last 13 years. Let's talk about the Boundless. Let's talk about, these incredible, you call them the noisy spirits. You seem so joyous, so light, so happy.
I tell you, on January 7th, when the fire happened, my husband, Michael, who has been on the beach since 1964, has never evacuated, not once. And there have been fires raging around us, but he's never evacuated. So I knew we weren't going to leave. And I sat up on our bluff on Topanga Beach. At that point, there was we call it a fire NATO. There was this, and this just enormous, gray, horrible, it was its own weather system. And I ran back onto the beach and grabbed our homeless guy, Scott, and was sitting huddled with his little dog in a tent, teeny little pup tent.
Yeah.
And at 4:17, Michael said, we have to go. First time in his life. And we went with Scott to my daughter-in-law, wonderful daughter-in-law in Manhattan Beach. And I was there for 6 months. we were in a lovely basement, lovely ground, like lovely Manhattan Beach. How lucky are we? But I was in shock.
Shock. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shock.
I was in shock, and I started a Boundless, like a thing, Boundless Joy, just to cheer us all up, and we ended up with like 170 people, in this thing, and then this book just like had to come through, and it worked really, really hard to get it out.
So the fire was really like a catalyst.
It was
for the
the
book.
only reason this book exists,
Right.
and then it says it's a roadmap, but I realized at the end that I love the title roadmap, but it's my roadmap, but each one of us need our own route. And I conjured up this crazy thing, which we call a spark compass. It's on page 155, and it's SPARK. So the S is on the top, like north. And that's really, what's your story? What's the story you've always had? And what's the story you want?
Yeah.
Let's not stick with the old story.
No.
Unless you're happy with it.
Right.
And then the east is, what's your purpose? What right now, not the purpose like a year ago. And what adventure do you want to go on to achieve this purpose? What's the A words? There are all kinds of cool A words you can put in there. And what resilience do you need? How are you going to stick with it?
Right.
Kind of keep that in mind. And then the middle of all of it is the K words, and kind, compassion, creativity. How are you going to get there with kindness, creativity, compassion? So it's this crazy little compass. And then you write your own story. You create your own roadmap, but now you've got a compass.
Oh my goodness, I love that. The story. If I can find what I truly love, that will be my little raft.
Yes.
Is that
Your
what
raft.
you do?
Well,
Once
that's
you
the
get
whole point.
inspired.
You feel alive when you're headed that direction. And that's the spark compass.
That is it, isn't
It's
it?
it.
You feel alive. Like I feel like that having this conversation
me
with
too.
you
Like,
today,
like,
Kathy. I'm like, this is it.
hang on to my
Somehow,
ankles.
whatever is happening here, this is it.
It's it.
So it's the compass that directs you to the life force, the bliss, as Joseph
flow.
Campbell, the flow. That's
Yep.
why we can't get constricted
Yeah.
or scared, because then I always say that's when you cut
Lock
off
it up.
your luck.
Circulation.
Your luck.
Oh, yeah, because, the breaking free is chapter 2. Listen to this. I'm sorry, I'm just going to read you a
No,
little
go
bit.
for it. I love
This
it.
is
There's so much wisdom here.
called Tap in the Sky. Why have my creative juices run dry? My cosmic tap in the sky has been reduced to a trickle, leaving me in a pickle, unable to draw, write, or even scribble. Although I know it's inappropriate to quibble over a lack of alien transmittal, why, say I, did the tap run dry? And basically, I try to do everything right. I'm in bed at 11, up at 7, eating sensible meals. That is kind of like, stuff it. And it's like this morning during my meditation, I had a revelation when a little voice inside me said, stop this prevarication, get out of bed. And it's wear something you've never worn before and go for coffee in a different part of town. No looking down at your iPhone.
So
Look
the
up.
synchronicity can
Just
kick in.
and give yourself something to live for and about. Don't be boring, because I can be really seriously boring for months and months and months. But if you really want to shift your gears, you can't do the same thing over and over again.
You've
have
got to
do
go
something
for it.
different.
Do something different. I love that. So that's another real key for people. If you're really down, try something different. So the synchronicity of opening to the universe and seeing what is presented.
Yeah, you betcha. And this noisy spirits, ghostly whispers, naughty nudges, and ethereal touches that inspire so much of who and how I am. Whatever you want to call noisy spirits. It can be your muse, it can be God, it can be spirit, source. It doesn't matter. Back in the day, in the 80s, I felt I had a number of guides. I know we all do, I think. And I don't have these conversations. This is rare.
Yeah, no, we can talk all
These are-
about the spirit
Nobody's
guides.
listening, right? No, you don't have anybody listening. Just us and Dejana, and we're good.
So
But
is that what Boundless is, or this is you channeling all sorts
I
of
think so.
noisy spirits?
Yeah,
It says in
I'm
here.
not claiming it. I don't write poetry. I don't like poetry. I don't like spoken word particularly. I mean, I do. I admire talent, but it's not what I do.
Right.
But I've got a book with I don't know how many.
But it came through you.
Yeah, I feel it really did. And I think it's really important stuff. And I can talk about it almost like it's a third person that has brought it to me, because I think that so much of what's in this book is about how we're going to get to this next dimension of our reality, which is tuned into the fact that we are all one. There's no, there's no separation. What's going on in Gaza? In
There's
Ukraine,
no accident that we're sitting here having this conversation.
kind of exciting.
Right?
And I haven't had this conversation with anybody.
So for me, this is right on. I'm happy to talk about the noisy spirits.
Almost everybody has had an experience where, gee, I don't really understand that, or synchronicity.
Synchronicity, yeah.
Deepak Chopra calls it synchrodestiny.
Yeah.
Or coincidences.
A little hummingbird kept flying around me yesterday. When I was sitting listening to your book under the tree, kept flying around and flying around.
I think Dan's part of a cohort, and I had a phenomenal psychic medium after Dan was killed. One of the top British, and I just sort of stumbled on her. But I went under a fake, assumed name. There was no way this woman could have ever known anything. And when I walked in, she said, darling, have a cup of tea. I can't promise anything. And then she said, whoa. She said, there's this young man jumping up and down saying, Mom, I guess he must be your son. And then she described how he'd been killed, the 2 memorial services we'd had. She was called a evidential medium. And then she said, don't come back for another year. You do not want to get hooked on.
Right.
She said, you can hear.
Psychics.
Listen.
But you're your own psychic now, aren't you?
Well,
because you seem very clear.
I think that we all are, but and you're a shaman. That was very much part of Native American culture. So the people grew up knowing that they were connected to spirit.
So what other things could you say have really helped you through your life? We've talked about synchronicity. We've talked about creativity. What else would you share? How important was it for you to discover true passion?
Really important.
With your lover.
Yeah, with a lover. I met someone who awakened me spiritually and sexually in every way possible. I was still not whole because I hadn't worked on myself enough. But I'd written a novel which predicted all of this. 2 years before I met the guy. And it was a very painful thing because I didn't want to fall in love with somebody. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I did not want to hurt anybody.
I can totally understand.
Yeah. It happens. And it's heartbreaking. And I didn't end up with a guy. I still know him. I value my friendship with him.
Beautiful.
And he taught me so much. But it was one of those things where we never really could have been together, but he was the catalyst. And I believe that often happens,
right,
that the person who is the catalyst you don't actually end up with.
Right. You just learned more about yourself.
Yeah, I had been a very inhibited, brought up at a time when nobody talked about anything. You certainly didn't talk about your sexuality or, fulfillment.
Right.
No idea. And to finally have that awakening, which I'm very candid in my book. If people want to learn more about that, you can read
I learned about it.
Dive into that book.
Yeah.
The
flow of Kundalini energy,
exactly.
Right?
Kundalini energy, and there's no looking back after that's been released. But I hate that it had to hurt so many people, and I still feel sad. But even though everybody happy endings, I was going to say one of the important things for me is my relationship with my daughter.
Right. Yes.
And it's a blessing. And Amy, when she graduated from college, she had a brilliant idea for a film, which became the Dying to Tell the Story film. And we had to make it as a mother and daughter working together. So I had to learn how to respect her as my partner, in filmmaking.
Wow. How wonderful is that? That's like I worked with my sister for many years.
Yeah. It's a whole different thing.
Do you guys work on creative visions together?
Oh, man. She's taking the lead in our whole students' impact education.
Do you feel like you guys have done this all before in another life?
That's a good question. I think from the time she was tiny, we flowed. Dan and I bounced off of each other. We were probably very similar in many ways.
Right.
And he could kind of deal with me for about 2 days before, and he challenged everything I said in the most loving way. But it was like, Mom, Whereas Amy and I are just like Cancerian, flow together.
Oh, you're Cancerians.
Yeah,
I get on really well with I'm a Sagittarian,
Oh,
but my sister's Cancerian.
I'm Sagittarius rising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you Cancerian or
Cancer, and then the Gemini moon, and then Sagittarius rising.
Yes,
we're good.
definitely. We're good. Yes.
That Peter Pan aspect of
yeah,
oneself.
right.
You're like,
We always have to have someone
I
grounding.
won't grow up.
Yeah. Gosh, what a blessing that after everything you went through earlier, that all fell into place. Where did you meet Michael?
We were on a blind date. He didn't know it was a blind date. I knew it was a blind date. He had no idea, and his friend had set up for me to sit in front of the restaurant at the old Santa Monica Airport. There was a wonderful restaurant there, and I was sitting on a bench. And Michael said, "Oh, you see that redhead there? I'll bet you dinner that I can get her to have dinner with us." To my friend who was in the car bringing him to have dinner with me. But,
oh my
and
gosh.
so Rick jumped out of the car and said, "Kathy, Michael, Kathy," and Michael's like, "How come you know her?" Because he would never have gone on a blind date.
Wow, how crazy is that? But they match made
They
you.
match made, and it was a very long whatever. And finally, Rosie O'Donnell, who I adore, asked me to go on a gay family cruise. And I said, "Did you know I wasn't gay?" But I said, "Ro, can I bring a guy?" And it was like, whatever.
Good for you.
And she said, "If I weren't gay, I'd have him off you so fast you wouldn't know it hit." She just reiterated that when we were at the Fringe.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
And so you married Michael.
I married Michael on the beach.
Oh, how beautiful.
But it's not like it's happily ever after. He's been sick. And,
Yes.
life is full of ups and downs and
Right.
ins and outs and overs and unders and throughs.
But you seem like such a lover of life. I think that is what has created this amazing journey.
But there was a 2-year depression period.
There was.
There where I sat and looked at a wall or chanted at a wall.
Was that recently or?
No, that was 1988 to 90. And I literally, and I want to really reiterate that. And then when Dan was killed, obviously that was another dark period. And I'm doing a collection of noisy spirits who have taken that deep pain of loss and have turned it into something amazing. So from my perspective in grief, that energy can either kill you or you can take that grieving energy and use it for something.
Something.
Yeah.
So that's what you would tell anyone going through.
Yeah, and it could be a window box. It doesn't have to be.
Get it out of yourself. Just
dedicate something.
Dedicate
the name
something
of that person that you love so much, and whatever it can be, teensy weeny. It doesn't have to be big.
I see. So you're saying do something with the grief. Don't sit and just allow it to churn and churn. You've got to put it out of you
and dedicate it to that person, but pour that energy into something and go through the grief. You have to, but I have seen people who've lost children who literally have never recovered, or lost a spouse, and they have never. There's not joy. And Khalil Gibran says, "Dig deep the well of sorrow, for therein lies the joy." And I love that phrase.
I just got chills.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
beautiful, isn't it? And I think that I dug that so deeply that there can be so much joy in it.
You hit gold in the end.
I hit gold, but my joy really truly comes from I get to work every day with people who it's kind of like they know there's something there, or they've got an idea, and I get to help them shape it. That is what fills me with joy.
That's wonderful. We need you around here.
Thank you. I'm in.
Great.
Put me on speed dial.
That's wonderful. You're almost being like a midwife as well as being a creative
I love
in your
that.
own. I like that about the interviewing, actually, because
Yeah.
I love hearing people's stories and their wisdom, sharing their wisdom.
Well, your openness and joy will pull things that they've never said before, like me.
Oh, really? That's wonderful. No, I have such a love of people.
Yeah.
And I learn so much from every single person. It's so inspiring.
What I always said about Malibu is, what do you think of? Sun, surf, sand, sex. But what's the soul of Malibu? And I think this period where Malibu, we're all cracked and broken open, but I think we can be that exemplar and light for the world. And
Right.
we're a community of artists and storytellers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a walk by the ocean just after the fires, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. I was very scrambled. I've loved LA since I was, 23. I first came to Malibu after I overdubbed a movie. And I couldn't make sense. And I was like, are the spirits sort of taking the land back? Is that what they want? Is it? Do they want us to go back to nature here? What is going on here?
Yeah.
You know, because it was very quiet at that time, and you just had all the nature all around you, the waves and the birds, and
Yeah,
what
like
is it they
COVID
really?
as well. COVID, and then the one fire and then another fire. There's a tremendous desire for nature to balance things out. I mean, yeah,
It felt like that a
Yeah.
little bit.
yeah.
What else could you share with, you know, like say a mother or a father who's lost a child?
Oh, that is a place I would never wish to be again. And I have just so many people come to me right after their son, daughter, child has died or friend or love. And I know that anguish where you think you will never be happy again. You will never sleep. You will never be able to walk through a room without feeling the presence or regretting the lack of presence of that person. And all I can say is that human beings are wired in the most remarkable way that gently, gently over time and space, you will start to feel better. And it's not the first year. Sure didn't work for me, and for nearly everybody I've met, the second year is harder. And
Oh, really?
I hate to say that.
Wow, because you have more distractions, people around you the first year, or?
I don't know. It's just like you think, okay, I'm going to get through this first year. I'm going to have the first birthday party and the first Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then it's going to get better. And for whatever reason, the depth with intensity of pain, honestly, in the second year. And so what I'm saying is don't give up, because then I think the healing really starts to happen. And then if you can find that pouring some of your energy into something that will commemorate that beautiful being, that helps. But know that over time you will laugh again. So find people. They won't be your son. Nobody's Dan. But my God, I've got some Aisha and
Amazing.
Hunter and Jen. I've got so many beautiful people that give me so much joy.
Oh,
so just
that's
like
so
pull 'em in.
lovely to hear.
And if you've lost a mother, find those people who can give you that mothering energy.
Oh.
It might take 10 to fill up that.
Oh, wow,
gap.
that's great to
choose
know.
them,
My mother has the last stage of Alzheimer's, so she is just lying in a bed
man.
at this point.
So you got to choose some good mamas out
Yeah,
there.
I've had some wonderful American mothers, but
Yes.
I think I think you're right though. I should find
More.
even more.
Choose
Yes.
some more.
Yeah,
because they will
Yeah.
be so honored.
Yeah.
And you will get better.
That's really wonderful. So I promised myself
Okay.
this bit. I have, since I was in my teens, I always wanted to spend time in Kenya. I wanted to be a zoologist. I wanted to go on safari. And I really feel like now is the time.
Best is yet to come. Yes.
Yeah, to do it. And I always felt like at some point I would have an intimate or a relationship with Kenya. And you have spent so much time. What can you tell me about safari? Anything you like. The little girl inside me right now is like, woo!
I think Kenya is on an energy band. There's Mount Kenya is one of the, I can't remember what they're called anymore, but there's a force there. And Kenyans of all varieties, there are 42 ethnic groups in Kenya, plus Kenyan Asians who are of Indian and Pakistani descent, plus what they call Europeans, who are the white people. It's a very diverse culture, nation. And people are pretty tolerant to one another, and they're very creative. They've had to solve problems. And what I love about Kenya, as opposed to, I've been spending a lot of time in Rwanda lately.
Oh, right.
And Rwanda is remarkable. It's like Switzerland. But the people quite naturally have to be very careful about what they say, because there is a very controlling president, and they had the genocide. I understand why it's like it is, but Kenya is much more open and free, and people are creative, and I think you will really enjoy the place. And of course, safari is part of the adventure, but the creativity of people.
I want to go around Kenya podcasting. You want to go?
Done. I mean, I think we should do it in January.
Yeah, I think we'll find a podcast studio and we'll interview amazing women.
I love it.
In Kenya as well. Woman on Top. Yeah, let's go do it.
I'm in.
and Dijana.
And Dijana, you're coming.
Yeah, we'll find amazing African women, and we'll sit about and talk about
All
what it is.
varieties, and they're like filmmakers, artists, creators of all varieties.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
I love it.
You are amazing, Kathy.
I am grateful to have this opportunity to celebrate.
I want everybody to go and grab the book.
Boundless.
You know, I'm gonna sit and read some of the parts I haven't now, but I think your energy is inspiring, and I think you are a catalyst.
What you see in me is what you are, by the way. just to send it back to you.
Oh, thanks. A fire starter. Thank you so much.
Thank you
oh
very
my
much.
God.